All right. Well, thank you very much indeed for coming along. We are recording this for PJ Stevens Leadership Lab and his YouTube channel. My name's Astrid Davies. I am standing in for PJ today. We have Raoul, Mark, and Vivian on the call. And today our theme is communication. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share and we can make a start. We're here for Leadership Labs every Wednesday at midday. And that's me. That's me when I had curly hair. It's no longer me. And this is where we are in the 13-week structure. That way. So we're communication. Last one, hopefully, was Teams. Next one's going to be feedback. And as you can see, you've got psych safety down here. So one of the issues that I'm bringing in here is just to broach the topic, and then you'll be able to discover it in a bit more depth with PJ later. But I just want to get the thinking going with these topics on the right hand side. What is it that we're actually meaning by communication? And that's where I'd be involving transactional analysis, where it says transactional conversations, because quite a lot of communication ends up being all broadcast, no receive, if you know what I mean. So there's a lot of top down, there's a lot of messaging at people. And I am afraid I think that's just that, messaging at people. I think what we actually have when we have communication is two-way. And I think that there is the opportunity for communication to fill the gaps between people's positions on any particular topic. It's about building relationships, yes, but it's also about underpinning existing relationships between organizations, between countries, or between individuals. It can be at any level. We'll be looking at psychological safety, we'll be looking at transactional analysis, and then hopefully we can open it up for a conversation about leaders being better communicators. And obviously, as ever, bring what you want to the table. Hopefully that makes sense to you both. You'll have to say yes because I can't see you.
Yes. Thank you,
Thank you.
Astrid. Yes, very clear.
Thank you.
Yeah, all good.
Good stuff. Thank you. Yeah, keep yourselves unless you're in very noisy offices, do keep yourselves on speaker, because then we can have a conversation as we're going through. I'm not proposing that I am doing this as a broadcast to you. This is for interaction all the way through and explore it. For a start, are either of you familiar with this model?
No, I am not.
Psychological safety model. Okay. You'll see
No, I haven't seen that. No.
Okay, you will be able to see on the slide. The copyright is Dr. Timothy R. Clark, and it is promoted by Leader Factor, which is his company. And this is 4 stages of psychological safety. There are different psychological safety models and approaches, but this one I find really speaks to me because it's a combination of respect and permission. Respect by leaders and permission given by leaders. And if you don't have much respect for your people, and you don't give them much permission, or there's not much effort put into including people, then what you have is exclusion. And in other words, you have a psychologically unsafe workplace. Doesn't mean to say that it's unsafe in the health and safety high vis kind of way, but emotionally, in terms of emotional intelligence, in terms of all those kind of combinations, it's not psychologically safe. Newsflash, that's not great. It's amazing, isn't it? It's rocket science, this stuff. Right. So the first time that you come on to embracing psychological safety is inclusion. Malcolm X famously said, "How can I be a diner when you won't let me dine?" It's the same for workers. How can I be a true worker if you won't let me work? And if work is just coming in, doing the do, getting the paycheck, going home, and it's like a modern day version of the film Metropolis, then that's not inclusion safety either. This is about engaging with your teams, getting them to help set their vision or their key performance indicators or their appraisals, engaging with your team in a two-way basis. Again, not just broadcast, a little bit of receive goes down nicely. When you have that, you start including them in the running of and structure of their world. And when you're doing that, you have what Clark terms the inclusion threshold. Now, if you can see here on the screen, you've got these two elements of paternalism and exploitation. Paternalism, the largesse of the leader, allowing people to be engaged. All right, it's not great when you describe it like that, but that's actually what is happening. Exploitation is when you're not giving anybody respect and you're letting them have either free rein or massive amounts of responsibility within a very tightly defined area. And neither of those, neither paternalism nor exploitation, is a positive environment in which to be working. So what Clark's model does is it shows us that from that basic level of it letting people be included, it's then possible to liberate and inform and enable your teams to the extent then that you can progress along his ladder. The next stage is learner safety, and that is for those people who are fond of agile process improvement. The freedom to fail piece is in here. It's safe to experiment. It's safe to learn. It's safe not to know. This is when you have learner safety, is when it's okay for people, even at the very top, to say, I don't know, but I can find out. I don't know, but I will find out. I don't know. Let me ask someone who knows more than me. I don't know. Do you know? Can you help? Can you inform this? And the person that they're asking may not be their equivalent in terms of status. The person they're asking may well be someone who is junior, either junior in age or junior in status. And that's okay. Not only is it okay, it's actually healthy. Because then you're starting to have not just people feeling included, but also people feeling that they are free to learn and acquire information and admit that they don't know the information yet. And that yet is all important. It's not an excuse to just sit on your hands and not bother learning. It's about the learning journey and the way that people acquire information and giving them freedom, time, and space to be able to do that. As you can see, the next one is contributor safety. So that is freedom to suggest stuff. And the last one is challenger safety. Now you will see another of the magic white arrows there, courtesy of Vivian, which is the innovation threshold. Contributions is great. Okay, having people's contributions is a wonderful thing, but it isn't always a reliable way of devising your policy, your strategies, your new sales targets, whatever, because people need to feel that they are contributing, but they need to be within a time frame and a set of parameters. But where you have a culture where people are confident, and confident because they have proven excellence, they have proven that they're good at what they do, where you have a workplace that is where the relationships and the culture is founded, like Lencioni's pyramid, it's founded on trust, then you'll find that in time it will build into challenger safety. And challenger safety is where people come to you, if you're at the top of the tree, and go, do you know what, boss? I think we could do this differently. I think we could do this better. And they feel comfortable saying that. They feel confident saying that. They wouldn't just come to you with a wine. They'll come to you with a fully worked out proposal, because they know that it's worth their time and that you would take it seriously. That is then your innovation threshold, and beyond that you have challenger safety. Once you're in challenger safety, you want not only have a psychologically safe workspace, but you also have a very effective leadership structure where it is not about an organogram, it's about people from the very roots of your organization taking the reins for themselves, taking ownership of their own leadership, their self-leadership, and being leaders at all levels and positions around the organization. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's I think it's very difficult to follow that through to all levels. I think that's the struggle that quite often we had, or I had, and maybe I'm not. It wasn't, so I wasn't so good at it. It felt okay at sort of a senior level, but as it went down the ranks, when you got to shop floor, and it was much more challenging.
Yeah.
But I think we've started to overcome some of that by including them in more wider conversations. But I always found that a bit frustrating that people didn't get it as quickly as I did, and then I just told them to do it. You revert back to, well, can you just go with it, please?
It is very easy and indeed sometimes tempting to just simply go back to the bottom of the pyramid, if you like, or the bottom left hand side. I mean, I like the concept of this. I think it's obviously a very, very complicated thing, a complex environments with, as you say, Raoul, there's different people, different teams, different what have you, and to try and put that all onto one piece of A4 and make it understandable. You wouldn't, like you said, talking about the shop floor, you wouldn't want to throw up a slide that's to your team and say, hey, look, everyone, we're going to go from the red thing down there to the top right hand thing. Are you all with me?
Well, also they freak out a bit. Some people get really nervous about PJ talked about the change. Change is scary for everybody, so you got to be very careful the way you phrase it. But I think having that sort of the top two, stage 3 and 4, you definitely, when you get it, you go, wow, I didn't know how I got that, but now I'm getting it. But it's it's a magic sort of point where it tips, and there's probably lots of factors that contribute to that point of tipping.
One of the points that I would say is that the bit that's missing here, I guess it would be the lower or the right hand side of the ladder, if you like, is education. And I don't mean as in GCSEs. I mean people being educated about the business, how their role fits within the business. It's the NASA janitor man, I'm putting a man on the moon, Mr. President piece. And also given the opportunity to understand some of the implications of what they're being asked to take on or offered, what that actually means. Because you're absolutely right. People will sometimes freeze, and they'll freeze because they're offered something that is really quite big. And that could be a freedom. It could be a role. It could be a accountability. Lots of things that make people a bit twitchy. So it's about making folk feel safe to do that by giving them the information and giving them the information again and again and again, so that they believe because it's consistently the same information and every single time. That's what I have to say that, I've done change programs for sort of 25 years, and reinforcing the message. It is like marketing, Kotter and the kind of the communication piece. There is something really important here about how that communication happens. So when all of this is fundamental to communication, because no matter what communication you give, if you don't bear in mind the need to at least include people, and that is things like not leaving them off the email, real simple stuff, you're back down in the nasty claggy red zone. And just getting the right people contacted with the right email is a start towards inclusion safety. So I completely agree that the model looks quite complex. It is not something that one would share necessarily with sort of 150, 200 staff in a factory. However, it is something that a leadership team can grasp that they're on a journey towards. And it's the way to summarize that. I just want to take you on to the next piece because I'm mindful of time, and it will hopefully then be helpful. Are you familiar with transactional analysis, gentlemen?
Yeah, I don't know, I can't remember what it's called now. It's a very old book. Is it I'm okay, you're okay? I think
There is one of them. Yeah, it's The Games People Play, Eric Byrne.
Right, that's probably the one.
But
okay.
this piece, the ego state, is, you know, Jungian psychology, goes back as far as you like. The issue is when people don't see the communication as a transaction, when it is all that broadcast or all that receive. And you can get the telling that, oh, for goodness sake, just do it, will you? Which is the parent. Or you can have the, well, I don't know what I'm doing. No, this is too scary. Or no, they don't pay me enough to do that. Or the kind of, you know, passive aggressive cross elbows, cross arms thing, which would be child. This is a very crude paraphrase of Byrne's very good book. But the point is communication when it is in that adult ego state, I would suggest, is where we want to be, because it's about fact-based. It's not opinions. You're just stating facts, because if staying in that adult state where you're not judging, you're not responding, you're just saying, this is the thing, it's the fact. How are we going to resolve this issue? Not, it's your fault, what are you going to do about it? Just the language around that enables people to have a conversation, I would argue, that helps them stay much more in that ego state, which enables it to be an effective transaction, because you say something, then the response is based in that factual space, not anything else. Now, I think, I mean, this takes ages to go through, but it's the whole point that I'm trying to make here is that if people feel that they're talked down to, they will respond in a particular way, and often that is a childlike way, or the child ego state. And as you can see there, defensive, emotional, helpless, and entrenched, all very familiar when we're trying to introduce change into an organization. Sadly, sometimes I see change programs where people have brought me in because they need their change program rescued, because they've been doing the authoritative, condescending, talking down to people, or just adopting a totally directive, impatient mindset. Neither of those works, because it's not understanding the concept of it as a transaction. Now, I'm just going to stop sharing, because what I wanted to do was just see the combination of those. It isn't about we're not talking about the communication in its bigger sense, and possibly PJ would approach it in a different way. But I'm just putting out a couple of parameters, if you like, for different ways that communication, if framed effectively, can actually unlock an awful lot more. Either the psychological safety and the innovation, or the effective communication and the avoidance of emotion, particularly in a change program. Rob?
Yeah, I really like that last slide, actually. It sort of makes a lot of sense. And I think we probably jump from the top to the bottom, or we tend to be at the top, and then other people just sit at the bottom, and you can't understand why they're acting that way, because and you're not actually meeting them in the middle and talking to them like an adult. And I think the first line, stick to facts, is so telling, especially in emails, when they take the emotion out of it, and this is what's happened, this is what do you think kind of conversation, rather than this is what happened, this is what you're going to do, which you tend to fall into, and just sort of, it happened, then now sort it out, and by the way, this is how you're going to sort it out. And yeah. It's so tempting to do that, and easy to fall into that trap. But I think as you get older, you sort of learn to try and just say, I've seen this happened, then open it up to a conversation rather than a dictate.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If there is the opportunity for a two-way conversation, go back to the inclusion safety piece. If people feel that they're not going to get shot down just because they open their mouth, the contributor safety as well, further up, stage 3. If people don't feel that their head's going to be planed off at parapet level, they're more likely to contribute. And if they're more likely to contribute, you're going to get more diverse decision making because you've got greater diversity of thought. And if you've got more diverse decision making, you're almost certainly going to get better decision making.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's just a parrot, isn't it, of you? Yeah.
Groupthink. It's just a cycle of groupthink.
Yeah.
Mark, is this resonating with you?
Yeah, this is transactional analysis, and all part of that is one of the kind of cornerstones that you are not obliged to learn. That would be wrong, but you are encouraged to engage with when you're talking about and you're looking at conflict resolution effectively, of which I've done a lot of conflict resolution inside organizations to make sure that we're all at least talking as adults to each other and not as parents to children and vice versa.
Excellent. Forgive me, I don't know. I as we were making a start, I didn't inquire what brought you to the call. So
that's okay. I've known interacted with PJ on and off for quite a long time, and so hence that brought me to the course. Well, 10 weeks ago or however long ago it is.
No, that's because conflict resolution is all about communication, is it not? And the fact that, and it is the games that people play, people will sometimes play a game unconsciously. They will give out signals. I mean, communication is not just blah, 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 is it? It's, the old, very old-fashioned words, music, and dance has been percentages from Harvard have been discredited years ago. But there is still a reliance on, if I sat here with my camera off, or I was presenting to you like this, how engaged would you feel?
Yeah, I'm really struggling. I mean, I'm dealing with a big pharma company at the moment, and I find it so off-putting when they don't turn their cameras on a Zoom call or a Teams call. And I immediately I'm thinking, what are you doing? What you're not concentrating. And I in our organisation, we had one guy who just refused to do it, and in the end we just said, this is during COVID. We said, okay, hang on, this is not right because it's not fair on the others. The others are being open. Oh well, I've got put blur background. I don't care, but you're not going to sit there with your camera off, doing goodness knows what, playing solitaire or something. So it's so frustrating. I think it hasn't helped. We've all got used to Zoom, which is okay. It's great for these sort of things, but it's not a great tool for fostering good working environments. I think in teams, it's really been disastrous in some respects. But I find it. I don't know whether this is a trend or whether it's an age thing, but I do find it difficult to get people to actually talk face to face or in a meeting, or rather than email, text, or WhatsApp, and get away. So that's okay, because they're so easy to misread. I mean, you misread text all the time, and just pick up the phone, just talk to someone.
And sometimes when you're like me and you're online or a lot of the time, people have to leave voicemail messages for me, which is fatal because I'm with a major German mobile company, and their voicemail is rubbish. So it affects me sometime next week. It destroys my business. So I always say to people, just drop me an email, and I will respond. Not because I want it to be an email, although the audit trail never hurts. It's because then I know what it is they want, because they've actually had to think about writing it as opposed to. But one of the things that I find I struggle when I do things like online training is you can see people typing in the corner. And so I always say to people, we haven't evolved. You can't really see it because of the background, but pen. We have not evolved to take on information just because we type it in. We have evolved as mark makers.
That's right.
And because we want to evolve as mark makers, that's really important that people understand that when they write something down, the neuroscience is actually saying to them, okay, whoa, you need to get your coat off and do this now.
Mm.
And that
So much more.
makes it happen. There are a couple more slides that are on PJ's deck that I just wanted to share because they resonated. And always, because Mae West is always good for a quote. You only live once, but if you do it right, you know, that's all you need, or words to that effect. But this is that piece about bridge building. When we communicate as leaders, we communicate at as well as with sometimes, because we need people to have the vision. They need to be told the thing. They need to be told the direction. They need to be told the fact. But we can only do that if we have already built an effective bridge into someone else's world. Because otherwise it's a bit like the Channel Tunnel where, you know, it looked like they were going to be 1.5 feet out. You know, there's that thing where you're building, but you're only building from one side. You're reliant on people the other side building in the same place at the same angle to the same height, all the construction requirements. So we can only really, as leaders, make sure that our communication is effective, I would argue, by building that bridge, having already helped people lay those foundations. Go back to what I was saying about the underpinning it being education. And it's not academic education, it's about educating people in what you're thinking, informing them. And this is something that I wondered about, and I think we've kind of touched on that really with, lots I can see you nodding, Ral. There's this stuff about, is it lack of time? Is it lack of know-how? Is it lack of inclination? But the old CBA, can't be bothered, you know? And is it lack of care? Do we, as people in business, as leaders, care less these days? What's that about? And the last one I just wanted to take you through is this one. I'm not entirely sure I agree with it, but do we actually mean our communication to lead to change? Is it a change in behavior? Is it a change in direction? And how about that last question as well? Is spontaneous change inconvenient to leaders? What do you think?
Inconvenient? I suppose it depends who's driving the change. If it's my change, it's great. Of course, it's marvelous. It's mine. Yeah. If it's someone else's change, you're a bit more skeptical about it, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, not all change is good. I think we have to bear that in mind. Not all change is good.
No, correct.
Change for the sake of change isn't necessarily a good thing, and you know you can pivot in the wrong direction for sure, which constitutes a change, but you know, accidentally or otherwise.
Yeah.
I think there's a danger also you make knee-jerk reactions based on maybe a limited set of data, and you realise that you've gone down a completely blind alley, or made caused 10 errors instead of the one that you were trying to solve in the first place. So I think yes, controlled change or step changes, and in a conversational. I think it comes back to the importance of conversation. As long as you include the teams in the communications and conversations about whatever you're trying to solve, then you're more likely to get a balanced view of the change that you need to make, rather than I saw it, you do it, kind of dictatorship type way of old school way of running a business, which is outdated now.
Yes, indeed. Well, outdated and yet still very prevalent.
Yes. Yes, you do see it a lot. Yeah.
But I was just picking up on the points you made earlier, Mark, about the piece about cross transactions, i.e., conflict, and when you're unpacking or perhaps advising people to prevent conflict, how would you urge them to approach communication in that context?
I think a certain amount of conflict is inevitable, because quite a lot of this stuff in business and in life is outside of our control. Yeah. You could get handed the ticking time bomb by your boss and be told to go and fix it, and through, it's occurred through no fault of your own.
Yes, quite.
And how to do that in this, how to avoid that in this context, it's I think just an acceptance that stuff happens, and we've all got to do our best to make our way through it whilst consulting as to how it's going to happen. I don't know, that wasn't a great answer to your question, but I don't think there is a great answer to that question. I think
no, it's probably not a great question, to be fair, but there is something about how we communicate, being in the present, because sometimes I talk to when you're talking to clients and you're helping them scope it, and said, oh, we communicate regularly. They make it sound like it's as if they go into a booth and have a quick communicate. It's a very strange understanding of the concept of communication. And when I say to them, you're doing it all the time, they kind of look perplexed. And then I'm saying, well, what you're not saying, you may be saying on your face, or you may be communicating but not communicating if you're absent from a meeting.
Yeah.
And it's always seen as it has to be a proactive thing, like noise, as opposed to filling the gaps.
Or potentially not saying something.
Indeed.
The ability to leave a gap, which is some have to jump in and fill it. I was come back to your point about I think Mark made the point as well. Sort of understanding what you're giving out is communication. It's not just a video on Facebook to say, look what the company did this week or whatever. Like you say, a post-it on the wall that says these are our values. And I remember someone saying to me, if you walk into the office and you're having a bad morning, you're worried about something as a boss, or the owner or whatever, you might be worried about the business, you might be worried about your overdraft or whatever it is. They will know, and there's an immediate shutdown of process because what you're giving out.
Yeah.
But if you walk in, hey guys, it sounds crass, but actually just that kind of upbeat walk into the office can change the whole attitude of the people in the office. It doesn't mean you haven't got the burden on your shoulders, but you don't realize how much you're giving out all the time. And it isn't just an email to all the staff saying, hey, great, good figures this month. Gee, brilliant. They don't read that half the time, but they read you, or they read your body language.
Yeah, absolutely. I think leaders set the tone, and so often they don't realize that they're doing it. And it's that, and I guess it's the unspoken stuff also. Both of you will come across the potency of unspoken communication, but also the dangers of it, and the fact that it can leave real bear traps.
And yeah, definitely. I mean, that the sort of. Someone said to me, we know what you're thinking, Raoul, the way you shut your door in the morning. You shut your car door when I come in the car park.
Oh wow!
I was like, see, I'm not that transparent, am I? But again, I might have walked into the office going, hey, but if they saw me in the car park going, it doesn't matter how many hays you do, great guys, they've already seen you what you really like, and you go in your office and slam the door. So I don't think we don't realise how much we're picking up. I think there's some research in this. 80% is non-communicative, non-verbal communication, which you would never believe until you actually start learning this stuff and realising what you do.
When you start looking.
Yeah, I mean, you never know who's watching you when and why.
No.
On what they've got in the back of their head. If you're Ed Miliband and you're eating a bacon sandwich and that costs you the general election, that's a slight exaggeration. But my point is that he didn't know that.
No,
he was just eating a bacon sandwich.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
One of the things when I do leadership development networking for newly qualified professionals. And one of the things I teach them really early on, it's not a tutored thing, but one of the things I really work hard to instill is to use, discover, unpack, and use the verb to notice. Because when you are more observant as a leader, everything is easier. It's not always more pleasant, but it is more straightforward because you know more of the important stuff. The trick is to winnow out the, oh, that skirt's a bit short, kind of, judgmental stuff, and get into the, they've looked really unhappy all morning, might go and have a chat to them, or get their line manager to have a chat to them, arm around the shoulder, find out what's going on. That stuff you only get through noticing if people are just sort of sitting in their own little corral. I just want to share one more thing, because it's a slide that PJ has used before, but I've just highlighted on here the ones that I think are the blindingly obvious bits of communication. I'm still not sure about what number 5 on Kotter is, empowering bread-based action. I'm still not entirely sure what that one is, but not come across that before. But and certainly not with Kotter. But that urgency, the building coalitions, because communication is about influence potentially, and influence can be good or it can be nefarious, as we are seeing at a global level. Stuff about empowerment and communicating the change. So as we were saying, change is not always good, but if there is change, communicating about the change, just not letting things happen in silence, is hugely reassuring and powerful for teams. Listening to your team, having a clear vision and strategy for your team, I would argue with your team, and making sure that communication is anchored in culture. And it just felt like it was appropriate to kind of look at the models of change that PJ's shared with you on different calls, and just say, communication is through everything we do like a stick of rock. And if it isn't, I would respectfully suggest that we're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think of the way that we could be using communication as leaders?
Well, that's quite broad.
Yeah,
that would be here all day, right?
we could. I was only imagining it would be 5 minutes, but
okay. Well, probably better that it's 5 minutes with me, because otherwise we will be here all day. Yeah, I think tell them what you told them. No, but tell them who you are. Tell them what you told them, or tell them what you asked them. This touching back on the slide, 3 slides previous, about there being too many ways now of either broadcasting what you want to broadcast, or being able to get in front of people, or people to be able to get in front of you. And I think if there was one thing, it's make sure it's easy for people to get in front of you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Otherwise, how do you notice stuff if there's a gatekeeper? If there's a gatekeeper and a gatekeeper to that gatekeeper, I'm not saying have a suggestion box and put the chief exec's email, on the wall, but certainly it's right back to your first bit. Communication is, we can broadcast or we can have a transaction, and if you can't have that backwards bit of the transaction, then you're just broadcasting, which is fine in certain instances. If you've got 20,000 people that work for you, you can't talk to everybody. No. But you have to be very careful in how you use it and what you use, and the tone of that you're using.
I think it has to be that safe space as well. The bottom line, you've got to have trust, and you've got to be able to accept that you're going to hear things back, 360 feedback or suggestion. We had some of the best suggestions that have ever been made have come off our suggestion board, from sources that you wouldn't have gone to necessarily, and that they may not even approach and it felt safe to actually give the it's they can
Is that
anonymise it.
because it wasn't completely anonymous? Because that's an aspect of it. If you field it anonymously.
If there was options, you could have there was anonymous, or it was you could put your name on, so you can go into the hat for the
if you were
best
brave
suggestion.
enough. Yeah.
If you're brave enough, I had some that can have gold taps, but you just have to accept that you're going to get some silly stuff, but you might get a gem out, and it doesn't really matter if you get some silly stuff. They're all treated equally. But
how did you close? Sorry to interrupt. How did you close the loop on that? Because you can solicit as much feedback as you like, but if nothing changes or you're not seen to be recognising
it kills it. Yeah, it kills it. It got to a point where we did have to be a bit more proactive. So we had a timeline on it. So you had to get 1 month. You had to have the response. The team leaders had to then say, "Are they put suggestions that we're going to go forward?" And then they would fed back to the team. It worked in lots of departments that were good at feeding back. With good managers were brilliant. The departments that the manager never fed back was a disaster, because the person putting it forward thought they'd never listened to. Actually, the directors were reading them, but it wasn't fed back. So we ended that, and we just said the directors will feed back, and it worked really well then. But you're right, suggestion boards without a feedback loop, and even the gold tap feedback, got fed back. There was an economic reason why we don't have gold taps. That's fine. So because my first month of doing it, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm chewing my fingers off. But actually, you go, okay, fair enough. It doesn't matter. You just cycle it back. But some really, really good, massive cost saving the exercises that were put into place because of the one suggestion. So massively powerful, but you do have to be on it, and it does take some management time to make sure it's done properly. But yeah, I would say valuable, but they have to feel safe. I mean, obviously, the further up, the more senior teams, you should have. Is it Lencioni? Yeah, you've got the dysfunction of a team. You've got to be able to have an argument. You've got to be able to disagree. You've got to have a passionate debate, but not walk out the room and have it in the corridor with someone else who didn't like. He's got to be in the room, and then you go out with a united front. And I think that's the hardest thing,
isn't it?
Sorry.
It's now adult to adult. If you
start
having an argument and having conflict, and you've got parent-child going on, you've lost. Just stop.
And we go into that chimp brain mode. You get all emotional, and but actually trying to get that really positive conversation, and it can be debate and can be fiercely debated, but then you agree and move on. I think the agree and move on is the really hard bit, because people don't really want to move on. I mean, I've had someone say something about 4 years ago, you didn't say something to me that morning. What? But I cannot believe you're still hanging on to that. But we do. We all have our own thing we hang on to. I had a teacher I didn't like. Get over it. It's 40 years ago, but you still hang on to it, don't you? So yeah, I think just remembering that we're all the same. Actually, we have the same reactions. So, but yeah, I don't think we ever stop learning, and you just keep trying to move along that ladder, I suppose. And sometimes you fall off and snakes and ladders and back again. Yeah.
I think the thing is, you go back to that, learner safety stuff. It's okay to drop the ball so long as you're transparent about the reasons that you did.
Yes. Yeah.
And if it has an adverse impact on people, then you say sorry. But otherwise, you just acknowledge that it was a boo-boo, and you learn from it. You don't repeat the boo-boo. But I think that's important. I am mindful that we could talk all session, but there are only 2 of you, and so as a result, there's a value time equation here.
I think we've done well there.
What I want to do, if I may, is just for the purposes of recording, making sure that other people viewing this can just see the remainder of the sessions. I'm just going to share the screen, because there's contact details for PJ at the end, and then we'll close the recording, if that's okay with you, gentlemen. Is that all right? Lovely, thank you very much. So this is the slide that we were looking at before. Next time, teams and teamwork. So it's a nice segue on from communication. And if anybody wants to be talking to PJ, PJ's contact details are on your screen. Thank you both very much indeed, and thank you also, Vivian, off screen. I'm sorry that you didn't have more kind of diversity of conversation, but I do hope that the conversation was a useful way to spend 3/4 of an hour today.
Very much so. Thank you, Astrid. Thank you very much for your time.
No, my pleasure. Lovely
nice to meet you.
And thank you both very much indeed. I wish you well, and thank you very much indeed.
See you soon.
See you next
Thank
one.
you very much.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Mark. Bye.